Who wins between GSP and Khabib? This is going to be difficult. There's a burning question that has captured the imagination of millions of people, and I want you to give me as much of an unbiased take as humanly possible. Who wins a 5-round catchweight, 165-pound MMA fight between GSP and Khabib? Now, let's simulate it. Who has the edge in stand-up striking?
In that regard, I have to give a slight edge to George St. Pierre, because if you look at him statistically, he's landed more strikes in his career, and he seems to get more offense going than Khabib statistically.
Takedowns and takedown defense.
Statistically, you would have to go with Khabib, because as amazing as George was with his takedowns and takedown defense, Khabib statistically had an edge over him.
Control.
That's an interesting. Both of them at their peak.
They're both known for it.
They're both, I would say that's even.
So you're gonna make it a draw?
I'd have to say draw, yeah.
Okay. Ground and pound.
At their peak, I would say, here I would give an edge to Khabib, I would say.
Submission.
That's a tricky one. Again, I would have to say, it's very difficult. I think Khabib has more finishes statistically. I'm doing this off the top of my head.
Okay.
But George, I would say, has probably more title defenses. So George was really in the golden era of the middleweight division, whereas Khabib didn't really have the counterparts that George had. Khabib's greatest rival was Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, and those guys suffered many losses before and after, collectively. So you had McGregor lose to Diaz, so he lost afterwards to Dustin. He lost twice actually to Dustin. Dustin's lost to Islam Makhachev. George beat guys that had a greater pedigree, I would say. So I'd have to give the edge to George, even though Khabib has more subs. He didn't fight the stiff competition that George did. George had to dethrone arguably the greatest welterweight of all time, which was Matt Hughes, and he subbed Matt Hughes. If Khabib had subbed BJ Penn, that would be the equivalent of George St. Pierre subbing Matt Hughes, which would be far more than subbing, let's say, for instance, McGregor, because McGregor doesn't have the expertise in jiu-jitsu that a BJ Penn has, that Matt Hughes has. George subbed much more difficult opponents than Khabib did.
Okay. Who takes the least damage?
I would tell you, look, statistically, George in his prime landed the most strikes and took the least damage. However, Khabib seems to be impervious to damage. He never even has a bruise or a scar or a cut, a scratch even, I would say.
Yeah. Have you seen that picture going around online where it's like his after picture of all these fights and there's not a scratch? Yeah.
It's incredible how robust he is. It's incredible. So Georgia has taken damage in his career, but less than Khabib. Like he evaded more strikes than Khabib. But the thing is with Khabib is the hard kickers can hurt his leg. The hard punchers can stun him. With Poirier, he did wobble, but some of us think he lost his footing because he reacted in a way that didn't seem like he was phased at all. He never shows any damage, which is honestly incredibly, I can name only a few fighters that have that kind of quality, where you hit them and it doesn't matter. It seems to not matter.
Yeah, stamina.
Again, this is a really difficult. Look, I've trained with Khabib, and I can tell you that his conditioning is at the same level as George St. Pierre in his prime. So it's a non-question. If they were to fight, conditioning would not be a question.
Okay, so they both evenly. So now, does this fight, the simulated fight between the two, does it go the distance?
I would think so, because they're both incredibly difficult to finish. I think even if they took each other down, the other one would get up. It would be very hard to score. It would be a very controversial ending, because everybody would say, this guy won, that guy won. So I think it would be one of those fights, because both men defensively are incredibly difficult to score against.
Okay, who wins? Unanimous decision, split decision?
Look, if it was a pound for pound thing, I would say it's an even fight, because George is bigger physically. Khabib's more of a lightweight. I would say George has a small edge because he's bigger, but even then, I don't think George is, in the industry, we call it walking around weight. When you're not cutting, when you're not getting close to a fight, what are you naturally walking around at? Like when you're eating like normal. I would say Khabib's probably heavier than George. Right. So then again, I can't really say that George has a weight advantage. It's a very difficult fight to imagine.
That judge's scorecard comes out.
I think it's gonna be pick who you think won. It's such a hard thing to call.
So it'd be a split decision.
Yeah, something like that.
A controversial split decision, and everybody would be calling for a rematch.
Yeah, kind of thing. That's what I think would happen.